Happy Thursday. I'm dressed up. I'm going out tonight, but I thought we'd do a little story time first. Stream says Necronomicon. It's not Necronomicon. Didn't change it. Oh well, live with it. We are doing Grimm's fairy tales today. So let's get into it. I'm just going to do a few. Let's start with Faithful John, which is a little bit of a longer one. Faithful John. There was once all old king who, I think it means Anne. There was once an old king who, having fallen sick, thought to himself, "This is very likely my deathbed, on which I am lying." Then he said, "Let Faithful John be sent for." Faithful John was his best beloved servant, who was so called because he had served his king faithfully all his life long. When he came near the bed, the king said to him, "Faithful John, I feel my end is near, and my only care is for my son. Yet he is of tender years and does not always know how to shape his conduct. And unless you promise me to instruct him in all his actions and be a true foster father to him, I shall not be able to close my eyes in peace." Then answered Faithful John, "I will never forsake him and will serve him faithfully, even though it should cost me my life." And the old king said, "Then I die, being of good cheer and at peace." And he went on his way. And he went on to say, "After my death, you must lead him through the whole castle, into all the chambers, halls, and vaults, and show him the treasures that in them lie. But the last chamber in the long gallery, in which lies hidden the picture of the princess of the golden palace, you must not show him. If he were to see the picture, he would directly fall into so great a love for her, that he would faint with the strength of it, and afterwards, for her sake, run into great dangers. So you must guard him well." And as Faithful John gave him his hand upon it, the old king became still and silent, laid his head upon the pillow, and died. When the old king was laid in the grave, Faithful John told the young king what he had promised to his father on the deathbed, and said, "And I will certainly hold to my promise and be faithful to you as I was faithful to him, even though it should cost me my life." When the days of mourning were at an end, Faithful John said to the prince, "It is now time that you should see your inheritance. I will show you all the paternal castle." Then he led him over all the palace, upstairs and downstairs, and showed him all the treasures in the splendid chambers. One chamber only he did not open, that in which the perilous picture hung. Now the picture was so placed that when the door opened it was the first thing to be seen, and was so wonderfully painted that it seemed to breathe and move, and in the whole world there was nothing more lovely or more beautiful. The young king noticed how Faithful John always passed by this one door, and asked, "Why do not you undo this door?" "There is something inside that would terrify you," answered he. But the king answered, "I have seen the whole castle and will know what is in here also." And he went forward and tried to open the door by force. Then Faithful John called him back and said, "I promised your father on his deathbed that you should not see what is in that room. It might bring great misfortune on you it might bring great misfortune on you and me were I to break my promise." But the young king answered, "I shall be undone if I do not go inside that room. I shall have no peace day or night until I have seen it with mine eyes. I will not move from this place until you have unlocked it." Then Faithful John saw there was no help for it, and he chose out the key from the big bunch with a heavy heart and many sighs. When the door was opened, he walked in first, and thought that by standing in front of the king he might hide the picture from him. But that was no good. The king stood on tiptoe and looked over his shoulder. And when he saw the image of the lady that was so wonderfully beautiful and so glittering with gold and jewels, he fell on the ground powerless. Faithful John helped him up, took him to his bed, and thought with sorrow, "Oh me, the evil has come to pass. What will become of us?" Then he strengthened the king with wine until he came to himself. The first words that he said were, "Oh, the beautiful picture! Whose portrait is it?" "It is the portrait of the princess of the golden palace," answered Faithful John. Then the king said, "My love for her is so great that if all the leaves of the forest were tongues, they could not utter it. I stake my life on the chance of obtaining her, and you, my faithful John, must stand by me." The faithful servant considered for a long time how the business should be begun. It seemed to him that it would be a difficult matter to come only at a sight of the princess. At last he thought it away and said to the king, "All that she has about her is of gold, tables, chairs, dishes, drinking cups, bowls, and all the household furniture. In your treasury are 5 tons of gold. Let the goldsmiths of your kingdom work it up into all kinds of vessels and implements, into all kinds of birds and wild creatures and wonderful beasts, such as may please her. Then we will carry them off with us and go seek our fortune." The king had all the goldsmiths fetched, and they worked day and night until at last some splendid things were got ready. When a ship had been loaded with them, Faithful John put on the garb of a merchant, and so did the king, and so the more completely to disguise themselves. Then they journeyed over the sea and went as far that at last they came to the city where the princess of the golden palace dwelt. Faithful John told the king to stay in the ship and to wait for him. "Perhaps," said he, "I shall bring the princess back with me, so take care that everything is in order. Let the golden vessels be placed about, and the whole ship be adorned." Then he gathered together in his apron some of the gold things, one of each kind, landed, and went up to the royal castle. And when he reached the courtyard of the castle, there stood by the well a pretty maiden, who had 2 golden pails in her hand, and she was drawing water with them. And as she turned round to carry them, she saw the strange man, and asked him who he was. I'm a little choppy with reading. I have contacts in. He answered, I am a merchant, and opened his apron and let her look within it. Oh, what beautiful things, cried she, and setting down her pails, she turned the golden toys over, and looked at them one after another. Then she said, the princess must see these. She takes so much pleasure in gold things that she will buy them all from you. Then she took him by the hand and led him in, for she was the chambermaid. When the princess saw the golden ware, she was very pleased, and said, all of these are so finely worked that I should like to buy them off you. But the faithful John said, I am only the servant of a rich merchant, and what I have here is nothing to what my master has in the ship, the cunningest and costliest things that ever were made of gold. The princess then wanted it all to be brought to her, but he said, that would take up many days. So great is the number of them, and so much space would they occupy, that there would not be enough room for them in your house. But the princess's curiosity and fancy grew so much that at last she said, lead me to the ship. I will let myself go and see your master's treasures. Then faithful John led her to the ship joyfully, and the king, when he saw that her beauty was even greater than the picture it set forth, felt his heart leap at the sight. Then she climbed up into the ship, and the king received her. Faithful John stayed by the steersman and gave orders for the ship to push off, saying, spread all sail that she may fly like a bird in the air. So the king showed her all the golden things, each separately, the dishes, the bowls, the birds, the wild creatures, and the wonderful beasts. Many hours were passed in looking at them all, and in her pleasure the princess never noticed that the ship was moving onwards. When she had examined the last, she thanked the merchant and prepared to return home. But when she came to the ship's side, she saw that they were high on the seas, far from land, and speeding under full sail. Oh, she cried, full of terror, I am betrayed and carried off by this merchant. Oh, that I had died rather than have fallen into his power. But the king took hold of her hand and said, no merchant am I, but a king, and no baser of birth than thyself. It is because of my overmastering love for thee that I have carried thee off by cunning. The first time I saw thy picture, I fell fainting to the earth. When the princess of the golden palace heard this, she became more trustful, and her heart inclined favorably towards him, so that she willingly consented to become his wife. It happened, however, as they were still journeying on the open sea, that faithful John, as he sat in the forepart of the ship and made music, caught sight of 3 ravens in the air flying overhead. Then he stopped playing and listened to what they said to one another, for he understood them quite well. The first one cried, Aye, there goes the princess of the golden palace. Yes, answered the second, but he has not got her safe yet. And the third said, He has her, though. She sits beside him in the ship. Then the first one spoke again. What does that avail him? When they come on land, a fox-red horse will spring towards them. Then will try the king to mount him, and if he does, the horse will rise with him in the air, so that he will never see his bride again. The second raven asked, Is there no remedy? Oh yes, if another man mounts quickly and takes the pistol out of the holster and shoots the horse dead with it, he will save the young king. But who knows that? And he that knows it and does it will become stone from toe to knee. Sorry, struggling because of my contacts. Then said the second, I know further that if the horse should be killed, the young king will not even then be sure of his bride. When they arrive at the castle, there will lie a wrought bride shirt in a dish, and it will seem all woven of gold and silver, but it is really of sulphur and pitch, and if he puts it on, he will burn him to the marrow of his bones. The third raven said, Is there no remedy? Oh yes, answered the second. If another man with gloves on picks up the shirt and throws it into a fire so that it is consumed, then is the young king delivered. But what avails that? He who knows it and does it will be turned into stone from his heart to his knee. Then spoke the third bird. I know yet more, that even when the bride shirt is burnt up, the king is not sure of his bride. When at the wedding the dance begins, and the young queen dances, she will suddenly grow pale and fall to the earth as if she were dead. And unless someone lifts her up and takes her 3 drops of blood from her right breast, she will die. But he that knows this and does this will become stone from the crown of his head to the sole of his foot. When the ravens had spoken thus amongst themselves, they flew away. Faithful John had understood it all, and from that time he remained quiet and sad, for he thought to himself that were he to conceal what he had heard from his master, misfortune would befall, and were he to discover it, his own life would be sacrificed. At last, however, he said within himself, I will save my master, though I myself should perish. So when they had come on land, it happened just as the ravens had foretold. There sprang forward a splendid fox-red horse. Come on, said the king, he shall carry me to the castle, and was going to mount, when faithful John passed before him and mounted quickly, drew the pistol out of the holster, and shot the horse dead. Holster. drew the pistol out of the holster, and shot the horse dead. Then the other servants of the king cried out, for they did not wish well to faithful John. How shameful to kill that beautiful animal that was to have carried the king to his castle. But the king said, Hold your tongues and let him be. He is my faithful John. He knows what is the good of it. Then they went up to the castle, and they stood in the hall a dish, and the wrought bride shirt that lay on it Then they went up to the castle, and there stood in the hall a dish, and the wrought bride shirt that lay on it seemed as if of gold and silver. The young king went up to it and was going to put it on, but faithful John pushed him away, picked it up with his gloved hands, and threw it quickly into the fire, and there let it burn. The other servants began grumbling again, and said, Look, he is even burning up the king's bridal shirt. But the young king said, Who knows but that there may be a good reason for it? Let him be. He is my faithful John. What is going on with this strand? Right there. Okay, sure. Then the wedding feast was held, and the bride led the dance. Faithful John watched her carefully, and all at once she grew pale and fell down as if she were dead. Then he went quickly to her and carried her into a chamber hard by, laid her down, and kneeling, took 3 drops of blood from her right breast. Immediately she drew breath again and raised herself up. But the young king, witnessing all, and not knowing why faithful John had done this, grew very angry and cried out, Throw him into prison. The next morning, faithful John was condemned to death and led to the gallows. And as he stood there ready to suffer, he said, He who is about to die is permitted to speak once before his end. May I claim that right? Yes, answered the king. It is granted to you. Then said faithful John, I have been condemned unjustly, for I have always been faithful. And he related how he had heard on the sea voyage to talk of the ravens, and how he had done everything in order to save his master. Then cried the king, O my faithful John, pardon, lead him down. But faithful John, as he spoke the last words, fell lifeless and became stone. The king and queen had great grief because of this, and the king said, Oh, how could I have evil rewarded such faithfulness? And he caused the stone image to be lifted up and put to stand in his sleeping room by the side of his bed. And as often as he saw it, he wept and said, Would that I could bring thee back to life, my faithful John. After some time, the queen bore twins, 2 little sons, that grew and thrived and were the joy of their parents. One day, when the queen was in church, the 2 children were sitting and playing with their father, and he gazed at the stone image full of sadness and cried, Oh, that I could bring thee back to life, my faithful John. Then the stone began to speak and said, Yes, thou canst bring me back to life again, if thou wilt bestow therefore thy best beloved. Then cried the king, All that I have in the world will I give up for thee. The stone went on to say, If thou wilt cut off the heads of thy 2 children with thine own hand, and besmear me with their blood, I shall receive life again. Jesus Christ. The king was horror-struck at the thought that he must put his beloved children to death, but he remembered all John's faithfulness, and how he had died for him, and drew his sword and cut off his children's head with his own hand. And when he had besmeared the stone with their blood, life returned to it. And faithful John stood alive and well before him, and said to the king, Thy faithfulness shall not be unrewarded. And taking up the heads of the children, he set them on again, and besmeared the wound with their blood, upon which in a moment they were whole again, and jumped about, and went on playing as if nothing had happened to them. Now was the king full of joy, and when he saw the queen coming in, he put the faithful John and the 2 children in a great chest. When she came in, he said to her, Hast thou prayed in church? Yes, answered she, but I was thinking all the while of faithful John, and how he came to such great misfortune through this. It is getting very dark. Then said he, Dear wife, we can let him live again, but it will cost us both our little sons, whom we must sacrifice. The queen grew pale and sick at heart, but said, We owe it to him, because of his great faithfulness. Then the king rejoiced because she thought as he did, and he went on and unlocked the chest, and took out the children and faithful John, and said, God be praised, he is delivered, and our little sons are ours again. Then he related to her how it had come to pass. After that, they all lived together in happiness to their lives' end. Yeah. What's up? I'm good. Thanks. How are you? Next is one called The Wonderful Musician. Sometimes they have little illustrations. I don't think Faithful John had a little illustration. Oh, it actually so did. Here it is. Just to see. Yeah. Next is called The Wonderful Musician. There was once a wonderful musician, and he was one day walking through a wood all alone, thinking of this and that. And when he had nothing more left to think about, he said to himself, I shall grow tired of being in this wood, so I will bring out a good companion. So he took the fiddle that hung at his back and fiddled so that the wood echoed. Before long, a wolf came through the thicket and trotted up to him. Oh, here comes a wolf. I had no particular wish for such company, said the musician. But the wolf drew nearer and said to him, Ho, you musician, how finely you play. I must learn how to play too. That is easily done, answered the musician. You have only to do exactly as I tell you. "O musician," said the wolf, "I will obey you, as a scholar does his master." The musician told him to come with him. As they went a part of the way together, they came to an old oak tree, which was hollow within and cleft through the middle. "Look here," said the musician, "if you want to learn how to fiddle, you must put your forefeet in this cleft." The wolf obeyed, but the musician took up a stone and quickly wedged both his paws with one stroke so fast that the wolf was a prisoner, and there obliged to stop. "Stay here until I come back again," said the musician, and went his way. After a while, he said again to himself, "I shall grow weary here in this wood. I will bring out another companion." And he took his fiddle and fiddled away in the wood. Before long, a fox came slinking through the trees. Wasn't the last one a fox? Oh, the last one was a wolf. "Oh, here comes a fox," said the musician. "I had no particular wish for such company." The fox came up to him and said, "Oh, my dear musician, how finely you play. I must learn to play too." "That is easily done," said the musician. "You only have to do exactly as I tell you." "Oh, musician," said the fox, "I will obey you, as a scholar his master." "Follow me," said the musician. And as they went a part of the way together, they came to a footpath with a high hedge on either side. Then the musician stopped, and taking hold of a hazel branch, bent it down to the earth and put his foot on the end of it. Then he bent down a branch from the other side and said, "Come on, little fox, if you wish to learn something, reach me your left forefoot." The fox obeyed, and the musician bound the foot to the left-hand branch. "Now, little fox," said he, "reach me the right one." And he bound that to the right-hand branch. And when he had seen that the knots were fast enough, he let go, and the branches flew back and caught up the fox, shaking and struggling in the air. "Wait here till I come back again," said the musician, and went his way. By and by he said to himself, "I shall grow weary in this wood. I will bring out another companion." So he took his fiddle, and the sound echoed through the wood. Then a hare sprang up before him. "Oh, here comes a hare," said he. "That is not what I want." "Oh, my dear musician," said the hare, "how finely you play. I should like to learn how to play too." "That is soon done," said the musician. "Only you must do whatever I tell you." "Oh, musician," answered the hare, "I will obey you, as a scholar his master." So they went a part of the way together until they came to a clear place in the wood where there stood an aspen tree. I'll give you 3 guesses as to where this is going. The musician tied a long string round the neck of the hare and knotted the other end of it to the tree. "Now then, courage, little hare, run 20 times round the tree," cried the musician, and the hare obeyed. And as he ran round the 20th time, the string had wound 20 times round the tree trunk, and the hare was imprisoned, and pull and tug as he would, he only cut his tender neck with the string. "Wait there until I come back again," said the musician, and walked on. The wolf meanwhile had struggled and pulled and bitten the stone, and worked away so long that at last he made his paws free and got himself out of the cleft. Full of anger and fury, he hastened after the musician to tear him to pieces. When the fox saw him run by, he began groaning and cried out with all his might, "Brother Wolf, come and help me! The musician has betrayed me!" The wolf then pulled the branches down, bit the knots in two, and set the fox free, and he went with him to take vengeance on the musician. They found the imprisoned hare and set him likewise free, and then they all went on together to seek their enemy. The musician had once more played his fiddle, and this time he had been more fortunate. The sound had reached the ears of a poor woodcutter, who immediately, and in spite of himself, left his work, and with his axe under his arm came to listen to the music. "At last here comes the right sort of companion," said the musician. "It is a man I wanted, and not wild animals." And then he began to play so sweetly that the poor man stood as if enchanted, and his heart was filled with joy. And as he was standing there, up came the wolf, the fox, and the hare, and he could easily see that they meant mischief. Then he raised his shining axe and stood in front of the musician, as if to say, Whoever means to harm him had better take care of himself, or he will have to do with me." Then the animals were frightened and ran back into the wood, and the musician, when he played once more to the man to show his gratitude, went on his way. Yeah, that's about that. Okay, probably one more. This one's called The 12 Brothers. Oh, I remember this one. Okay, The 12 Brothers. Once upon a time, there lived a king and queen very peacefully together. They had 12 children, all boys. Now the king said to the queen one day, "If our 13th child should be a girl, the 12 boys shall die, so that her riches may be the greater, and the kingdom fall to her alone." Then he caused 12 coffins to be made, and they were filled with shavings, and a little pillow laid in each. And they were brought and put in a locked-up room, and the king gave the key to the queen, and told her to say nothing about it any more. But the mother sat the whole day sorrowing, so that her youngest son, who never left her, and to whom she had given the Bible name Benjamin, said to her, "Dear mother, why are you so sad?" "Dearest child," answered she, "I dare not tell you." But he let her have no peace until she went and unlocked the room and showed him the 12 coffins with the shavings and the little pillows. Then she said, "My dear Benjamin, your father has caused these coffins to be made for you and your 11 brothers, and if I bring a little girl into the world, you are all to be put to death and buried therein." And she wept as she spoke, and her little son comforted her and said, "Weep not, dear mother, we will save ourselves and go far away." Oh, my nose is itchy. Then she answered, "Yes, go with your 11 brothers out into the world, and let one of you always sit on the top of the highest tree that can be found, and keep watch upon the tower of this castle. If a little son is born, I will put out a white flag, and then you may safely venture back again. But if it is a little daughter, I will put out a red flag, and then flee thee away as far as you can, and the dear God watch over you. Every night I will arise and pray for you, in winter that you may have a fire to warm yourselves by, and in summer that you may not languish in the heat." After that, when she had given her sons her blessing, they went away out into the wood. One after another kept watch, sitting on the highest oak tree, looking towards the tower. When 11 days had passed and Benjamin's turn came, he saw a flag put out, but it was not white, but blood red, to warn them that they were to die. When the brothers knew this, they became angry, saying, "Shall we suffer death because of a girl? We swear to be revenged. Wherever we find a girl, we shall shed her blood." Then they went deeper into the wood, and into the middle, where it was darkest, they found a little enchanted house standing empty. Then they said, "Here we will dwell, and you, Benjamin, the youngest and weakest, shall stay at home and keep house. We others will go abroad and purvey food." Then they went into the wood and caught hares, wild roes, birds and pigeons, and whatever else was good to eat, and brought them to Benjamin for him to cook and make ready to satisfy their hunger. So they lived together in that little house for 10 years, and the time did not seem long. By this time, the queen's little daughter was growing up, and she had a kind heart and a beautiful face, and a golden star on her forehead. Once, when there was a great wash, she saw among the clothes 12 shirts, and asked her mother, "Whose are these 12 shirts? They are too small to be my father's." Then the mother answered with a sore heart, "Dear child, they belong to your 12 brothers." The little girl said, "Where are my 12 brothers? I have never heard of them." And her mother answered, "God only knows where they are wandering about in the world." Then she led the little girl to the secret room and unlocked it, and showed her the 12 coffins with the shavings and the little pillows. "These coffins," said she, "were intended for your 12 brothers. But they went away far from here when you were born." And she related how everything had come to pass. Then said the little girl, "Dear mother, do not weep. I will go and seek my brothers." So she took the 12 shirts and went far and wide in the great forest. The day sped on, and in the evening she came to the enchanted house. She went in and found a youth who asked, "Whence do you come and what do you want?" And he marveled at her beauty, her royal garments, and the star on her forehead. Then she answered, "I am a king's daughter. I seek my 12 brothers, and will go everywhere under the blue sky until I find them." And she showed him the 12 shirts which belonged to them. Then Benjamin saw that it must be his sister, and said, "I am Benjamin, your youngest brother." Then she began weeping for joy, and Benjamin also, and they kissed and cheered each other with great love. After a while he said, "Dear sister, there is still a hindrance. We have sworn that any maiden that we meet must die, and as it was because of a maiden that we had to leave our kingdom." Then she said, "I will willingly die, if I so may benefit my 12 brothers." "No," answered he, "you shall not die. Sit down under this tub until the 11 brothers come, and I agree with them about it." She did so, and as night came on they returned from hunting, and supper was ready. And as they were sitting at table and eating, they asked, "What news?" And Benjamin said, "Don't you know any?" "No," answered they. So he said, "You have been in the wood, and I have stayed at home, and yet I know more than you." "Tell us," cried they. He answered, promise me that the first maiden we shall see shall not be put to death." "Yes, we promise," cried they all. "She shall have mercy. Tell us now." Then he said, "Our sister is here," and lifted up the tub, and the king's daughter came forth in her royal garments with her golden star on her head, and she seemed so beautiful, delicate, and sweet that they all rejoiced and fell on her neck and kissed her and loved her with all their hearts. After this she remained with Benjamin in the house and helped him with the work. The others went forth into the woods to catch wild animals, does, birds, and pigeons, food for them all, and the sister and Benjamin took care that all was made ready for them. She fetched the wood for cooking and the vegetables, and watched the pots on the fire, so that the supper was always ready when the others came in. She kept also greater order in the house, and the beds were always beautifully white and clean, and the brothers were contented and lived in unity. One day the two got ready a fine feast, and when they were all assembled, they sat down and ate and drank, and were full of joy. Now there was a little garden belonging to the enchanted house, in which grew 12 lilies. The maiden, thinking to please her brothers, went out to gather the 12 flowers, meaning to give one to each as they sat at meat. But as she broke off the flowers, in the same moment the brothers were changed into 12 ravens, and flew over the wood far away, and the house with the garden also disappeared. Thus far, a little more wholesome. It's not, I actually don't think it's the one I remember. So the poor maiden stood alone in the wild wood, and as she was looking around her, she saw an old woman standing by her, who said, "My child, what hast thou done? Why couldst thou not leave the 12 flowers standing? They were thy 12 brothers, who are now changed to ravens forever." The maiden said, weeping, "Is there no means of setting them free?" No, said the old woman. There is in the whole world no way but one, and that is difficult. Thou canst not release them, but by being dumb for 7 years. Thou must neither speak nor laugh, and wert thou to speak one single word, and it wanted but 1 hour of the 7 years, all would be in vain, and thy brothers would perish because of that one word. Then the maiden said in her heart, I am quite sure I can set my brothers free, and went and sought a tall tree, climbed up, and sat there spinning, and never spoke or laughed. Now it happened that a king, who was hunting in the wood, had with him a large greyhound, who ran up to the tree where the maiden was, springing up at it, and barked loudly. Up came the king, and saw the beautiful princess with the golden star on her forehead, and he was so charmed with her beauty that he prayed her to become his wife. She gave no answer, only a little nod of her head. Then he himself climbed the tree and brought her down, and set her on his horse, and took her home. The wedding was held with great splendor and rejoicing, but the bride neither spoke nor laughed. After they had lived pleasantly together for a few years, the king's mother, who was a wicked woman, began to slander the young queen. Began to slander the young queen, and said to the king, She is only a low beggar maid that you have taken to yourself. Who knows what mean tricks she is playing? Even if she really is dumb and cannot speak, she might at least laugh. Not to laugh is the sign of a bad conscience. At first, the king would believe nothing of it, but the old woman talked so long and suggested so many bad things that he at last let himself be persuaded and condemned the queen to death. Now a great fire was kindled in the courtyard, and she was to be burned in it. And the king stood above at the window and watched it all with weeping eyes, for he had held her very dear. And when she was already fast bound to the stake, and the fire was licking her garments with red tongues, the last moment of the 7 years came to an end. Then a rushing sound was heard in the air, and 12 ravens came flying and sank downwards, and as they touched the earth, they became her 12 brothers that she had lost. They rushed through the fire and quenched the flames, and set their dear sister free, kissing and consoling her. And now that her mouth was opened, and that she might venture to speak, she told the king the reason of her dumbness, and why she had never laughed. The king rejoiced when he heard of her innocence, and they all lived together in happiness until their death. But the wicked mother-in-law was very unhappy, and died miserably. Yeah, slightly more wholesome than the rest of them. Okay, this will actually be the last one. It's called The Vagabonds. The cock said to the hen, It is nutting time. Let us go together to the mountains and have a good feast for once, before the squirrels come and carry all away. Yes, answered the hen, come along. We will have a jolly time together. Then they set off together to the mountains, and as it was a fine day, they stayed there till the evening. Now, whether it was they had eaten so much, or because of their pride and haughtiness, I do not know, but they would not go home on foot, so the cock set to work to make a little carriage out of nutshells. When it was ready, the hen seated herself in it, and said to the cock, Now you can harness yourself to it. That's all very fine, said the cock. I would sooner go home on foot than do such a thing, and I never agreed to it. I don't mind being a coachman and sitting on the box, but as to drawing it myself, it's quite out of the question. As they were wrangling, a duck came quacking. You thieving vagabonds, who told you might go to my mountain? Look out, or it will be the worse for you, and flew at the cock with bill wide open. But the cock was not backward, and he gave the duck a good dig in his body, and hacked at her with his spurs so valiantly that she begged for mercy, and willingly allowed herself to be harnessed to the carriage. Then the cock seated himself on the box and was coachman, and so they went at a great pace, with the cock crying out, Run, duck, run as fast as you can. When they had gone a part of the way, they met 2 foot passengers, a pin and a needle. They cried, Stop, stop! And said that it would soon be a blindman's holiday, that they could not go a step further, and that the ways were very muddy. Might they just get in for a little? They had been standing at the door of their tailor's house to call, and it had been delayed because of beer. The cock, seeing that they were slender folks that would not take up a great deal of room, let them both step in, only they must promise not to tread on his toes nor on the hen's. Late in the evening they came to an inn, and there they found that they could not go any further that night, as the duck's paces were not good. She waddled so much from side to side, so they turned in. The landlord at first made some difficulty. His house was full already, and he thought they had no very distinguished appearance. At last, however, when they had made many fine speeches and promised him the egg that the hen laid on the way, that he should keep the duck, who laid one every day, he agreed to let them stay the night, and so they had a very gay time. Early in the morning, when it was beginning to grow light and everybody was still asleep, the cock waked up the hen, fetched the egg, and made a hole in it. They ate it up between them and put the eggshell on the hearth. Then they went up to the needle, who was still sleeping, picked him up by his head, and stuck him in the landlord's chair cushion, and having also placed the pin in his towel, off they flew over the hills and far away. The duck, who had chosen to sleep in the open air, had remained in the yard, heard the rustling of their wings, and, waking up, looked about till she found a brook, down which she swam a good deal faster than she had drawn the carriage. A few hours later the landlord woke, and, leaving his feather bed, began washing himself. But when he took the towel to dry himself, he drew the pin all across his face and made a red streak from ear to ear. Then he went into the kitchen to light his pipe, but when he stooped towards the hearth to take up the coal, the eggshell flew into his eyes. Everything goes wrong this morning, said he, and let himself drop, full of vexation, into his grandfather's chair. But up he jumped in a moment, crying, "Oh dear," for the needle had gone into him. Now he became angry, and had his suspicions of the guests who had arrived so late the evening before, and when he looked round for them, they were nowhere to be seen. Then he swore that he would never more harbour such vagabonds, that consumed so much, paid nothing, and played such nasty tricks into the bargain. That one's just rude. It's just rude, but here's the little drawing. How cute. Okay, that's all for today. I'll upload this one on YouTube because it actually wasn't too bad. I didn't stumble too much. I hope everyone has a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time zone you're in. And thanks for reading with me. Bye. How do I stop this? Okay, bye.